Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to welcome Gramps Jeffrey, or you may know him as Marc Joseph, one of the co-founders of babyboomerorg, as well as the author of I Don't Want to Turn 3. Welcome, Marc. How are you today?
Oh, good. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So you're an author, but you're also the founder of babyboomerorg. And for our viewers and listeners that aren't familiar with it, it's a newer website that specializes in resources and information, articles, all kinds of good stuff for the baby boomer population. What was the reason for creating babyboomer.org?
You know, the baby boomer generation is as diverse as any other generation before or after it, politically, religiously, ideas. But, you know, the one thing the baby boomers have in common is this shared experience. So, you know, when we were growing up, there were only 3 television stations. We all had landlines. So we all got the same kind of information. And that's how we grew up. So, you know, we grew up when the Kennedys were assassinated, when the Martin Luther King was assassinated. We grew up when we had the landing on the moon, you know, or when birth control became really widespread. Vietnam was a major part of our lives as we were growing up, you know, the riots in the streets. But the one thing we all, you know, really listened was the music. I mean, when you think about the music, the baby boomer generation, whether it's Elvis or the Beach Boys or the Beatles or Three Dog Nights or Supremes, I mean, we all can relate to that. You know, we all grew up with these same kinds of movies, you know, whether it was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Jaws, or maybe any of the Spielberg movies, Animal House, Star Wars, The Godfather. These are all things that kind of pulled us together. So we wanted to build a site where we could look at, you know, all the things of the past, you know, resources, you know, that we needed for retirement and financing and travel, but also dealing with the new challenges of our generation, like technology and health issues and things like that. So that's why we pulled this all together. So there's a one place for baby boomers can come and get all kinds of information on things that are very dear to them.
How old is the site now, Marc?
Oh, it just started in September. And so our goal was during our first phase is to bring in the best experts and contributors of our generation to share information. So, you know, we currently have over 200 podcasters on the site. We have over 500 contributors on the site, and they are all bringing their own experiences, their information to help educate us all. So, for instance, if you're looking for information about dementia, which is something we have to deal with right now, you know, we've got the best experts in the country talking about how to deal with it, you know, where to go, information to have, things like that. So that was our goal. But, you know, if you're a pickleball player and you want to learn more about pickleball, we got a whole section of our site on our generation playing pickleball. So that's what the site is all about.
What gave you the inspiration, though, to create it? Like, because it is a big site and you guys are doing so well over there. Did you just wake up and say, you know what, we need to build a website to provide these resources? Or was there a situation? Where's the origins come from?
It all kind of stemmed from my children's book. All right? My most recent book is a children's book is I Don't Want to Turn 3. And it's about, you know, I was lucky enough to have my grandkids here during the COVID, and I had a chance to watch how they react. So I had the opportunity to go out and start promoting my book, you know, on the children and how to deal with them, and how parents deal with them, and how grandparents deal with them. Because I was looking at it from, you know, a grandparent kind of way, and I found, you know, that, you know, in our generation, in the baby boomer generation, 30% of us grandparents really don't get involved in the raising of our grandchildren. And when you think about that, that's 1 out of every 3 of us, have said, I raised my own kids. They're good kids. Let them raise them. I got to go play pickleball.
Mhm.
So we've got that thing where a third of us really are not involved in helping this latest and greatest generation. And so you figure out why is a third of us just not involved in raising these kids? Well, one of the reasons would be that, we didn't like the spouse our kid married. Okay. So
Yeah.
that causes us tension, that we may have for that. We may have created anxiety between us and our kids by giving them unsolicited advice. It's baby boomers. We like to give advice. So we may have gone to our kids and they said, let's step back. I'm the adult now. I'll take care of it. We may just end up stopping by our kid's house unannounced. They don't like that. So we've got to create those boundaries. There's all kinds of examples of what pushes grandparents away from their children's generation and then obviously the grandchildren's generation. We undermine the parents' authorities when challenging, what a parent is teaching their kids. We may say, that's not the right thing to do. That causes issues for values and family structures. We may have a tendency to play favorites and manipulate all these kids. Now, I've got 6 grandkids. I've got a favorite, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm not even going to tell my wife, because you just can't do that. You've got to be able to treat them all the same. We may try to, we alienated our kids and our grandkids because we've taken control of the kids by giving money, gifts, vacations, things that we were overstepping. So, and our generation may have an overall lack of empathy. We may not be able to understand and share the feelings of others,
Right.
which is so crucial for young children growing up. Grandparents may demand that a child or grandchild, respect and comply with everything they're doing. So we as a generation have pulled away and caused the 1 out of 3 of us is not involved. So that kind of was the motive of creating a place. As we get older, us baby boomers, we've gone through lots of decades, and we've gone through a lot of mistakes. And as each decade comes along, you make more mistakes, but you also learn a lot more. You become a little more wiser. And so it really is our job now that we're hitting the older ages of our life is, we need to pass on the information, everything that we have learned to the very youngest generation. And so that's one of the reasons that we started the site. I've got 3 other baby boomers who are partners of this. And as our journey was, exploring how involved is our generation in teaching and all that, we said, we've got to come together and put together a place where everyone can kind of just share ideas.
What is there anything that you want to see happen with babyboomer.org that isn't happened yet, as far as what maybe the areas you might want to be into, or even content providers that you're hoping to get on the site, or different projects? Like, where is the site done as is, or do you have future plans for it that you could share with us?
Oh yeah, no, it's only beginning right now. Our goal again was to get the best in the country to contribute to the site. So when anyone comes to the site and they're going to feel comfortable, they're trusted information. And so that's what we've been working on. But in the next 60 days, we are going to be rolling out classes that our contributors and experts will be conducting, on all kinds of subjects, whether it's, healthcare, home care, or financing, or retirement, or how to play pickleball. We've got all kinds of classes lined up, exercise classes, things like that to help our generation learn more. So that's one phase that's rolling out pretty soon. Another phase is that we will have many columnists who are going to be writing, from a perspective on the site on all kinds of other subjects to enhance all the podcasts and all the the blogs and everything that we already have up on the site, from a current point of view. So that's happening. Now, the interesting thing about the baby boomer generation is there are still 12 million businesses that are owned by baby boomers. right? That's a big chunk of the American society. When you actually take a look at who is a baby boomer, baby boomers are born between 1946 and 1964. So it's 18 years, a couple decades of baby boomers. So they're currently 57, 75, 76 years old right now. That's who baby boomers are. There are 71.6 million baby boomers here in the United States today. That's a huge number. That's a big generation. Baby boomers hold 51% of all the wealth here in the U.S. They hold 70% of the disposable income. So, as they have become empty nesters and everything, they've got all this disposable income that they can use. They spend $548 billion a year. That's with a B. That's a big number. They spend more than any other generation. And then they spend more per transaction than any other generation. So there's a lot of economics still involved with the baby boomers. They have a net worth of $70 trillion. I don't even know what a trillion is. So, right. But that's a lot of money that they've got. They hold $20 trillion in stocks and mutual funds. They spend an average of $63,000 a year just out of what they spend. So you've got a very wealthy generation, and you got 12 million of us still owning businesses. Mm-hmm. And so something's going to happen with those businesses. Some of us will pass it on to our children, not a lot. You would think it'd be more, but not a lot. And what do we do that? So, also down the road, we'll have a area of our site where baby boomers will be able to sell their businesses, and younger generations will be able to buy them.
Wonderful. Do you see that generational shift from, maybe your grandparents or my grandparents and how they interacted with their grandchildren or the time they spent with their grandchildren to where, like you were just saying, now with the baby boomers and their grandchildren, do you see that trend changing back to the way it used to be eventually? Or do you see that shift continuing to widen with the relationships between grandparents and their grandchildren?
I don't know how it was for you, but I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and my grandmother lived 2 blocks away. My uncle lived right up the street. And so it was a really pretty tight-knit family unit. But now, as we grew up, we moved away. So the difference now between what that generation was and what we are is we're scattered all over the country. For me, as an example, I've got 6 grandkids. I've got 2 here with me in Scottsdale, Arizona. I got 2 in Austin, Texas, and I have 2 in Orlando, Florida. I mean, we're scattered. Yeah. So it's different than running up the street to see my cousins, and we can't do that. So that creates a different strain on what we're doing and how we are doing it. And so we've got to be able to learn how to deal with that. Because it's not going to get any different. I think, as new generations prosper and become they'll keep moving out. And so it's a different world. Now, what's interesting when you take a look at how we were raised, how our parents were raised. Now, our parents really were the greatest generation ever. When you think about it, they had to sit there and they were stuck in the Depression. They grew up in the Depression. Then World War II hit, and they all had to go to war. So when they came back, they're a pretty conservative generation. They had learned a lot from all the suffering that they had to go through. And they were pretty well, that's how we grew up, in a very disciplined kind of environment. And again, that also leads to why I think the baby boomers are, kind of got a lot of things in common, because we all kind of grew up in this environment where they're very strict. In my particular case, my brother Larry and I, when we were messing up, my mother would say, "Wait till your dad gets home," and he'd take off his belt and he would chase us around the kitchen table. And that was discipline. I mean, he had this fraternity paddle that he kept in his closet, also used on us. And one night the parents were out, and it was late fall, and my brother and I decided we're going to get that paddle. We took his paddle and we took it outside, and all the leaves had just fallen from all the trees, and we buried it underneath a pile of leaves. And then it snowed that night, and snow came on top of it, and we went out to look at it in the spring, and it was gone. That was a miracle to me. And the paddle was gone. So, I think we learned from that. And as we raised our kids, we didn't chase them around the kitchen table with a belt. We tried to get into their heads and figure out how to do that kind of discipline. So, that's how generations are as they change. And their generation, my kids are raising their kids even better than we raised them. I mean, the kid starts messing up, they send him out to time out so that he can't be with his friends. They got to apologize. I mean, I was at my 3-year-old's birthday party about 4 months ago, and and she'd gotten all these trucks for her birthday, and her 4-year-old brother, they were fighting over the trucks, and she looks at him and she says, "I need my space." She gets up and she walks over to the side of into the sofa, and he looks at her and he says, "I need my space too," and he walks over to the other side. Now, I don't think that's something their mother taught them. I think that's probably their mother got so frustrated with both of them and said, "I need my space."
Right.
But they learned from that.
Yeah.
And it's a way for them to learn how to get along. So I think that is part of how this whole generations have evolved. And I think it's better today than when I was growing up.
Well, and I think, isn't that hopefully our goal as a society? Each generation improves upon the last one and just makes it better for everyone. That I would hope that would be the goal.
Yeah, when you got to think about what is a true responsibility of parents in today's world. Obviously they're with all this instant information we have, with all this social, there's information coming to us all the time. But this is a very uncertain, very cruel world with all kinds of different ideas. What is the real true role of parents in this kind of environment?
Right.
Because when we were growing up, we didn't have instant information, but now we do. They have to deal with it. Obviously parents provide their children with food and clothing and a place to live. They provide them with financial support, medical care, the opportunity to receive an education. That's what parents are supposed to do. They're there to protect their children, from harm and provide them with a safe environment, and so that's why it's so scary with what's going on in our country.
Right.
It's not safe. So because the parents are the most influential people for our children, they have more power really to bring the good qualities that we need in our daily lives. Traits parents should make sure that they're instilling in their children is obviously honesty, responsibility, kindness. We got to have kindness, independence. We need these kids to be independent. Respect, positive thinking. These are all things that parents need to reinforce. Creativity. We need as many creative kids as we have in this society. Healthy eating and exercising, all put together. Success can really be learned by failure, and we've done that. We've got to teach our kids you can fail, but you can learn from it. But the one thing that we need to make sure parents teach their kids, and where as a grandparents should actually get involved, is how do you have fun in today's world? What do you do outside of your normal life? When you think about it, I am convinced this generation coming up today, these kids from 1 to 10 years old, are the greatest generation this country's ever produced. I mean, as soon as they come out of the womb, they're on the internet. They got their cell phones, they got electronic stuff, and so it's up to the grandparents to bring in their knowledge and how to have fun. And what do you do besides the internet? How do you go out and play? What can you learn from that? And that's one of our main roles, I think, in today's world is, bring normality to these kids' lives that are they're just on the internet, and that's what they think life is all about.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the kids for a minute, because we've talked about babyboomer.org, which we'll have the links to the site in the show notes and up here on the screen as well for our viewers. But you've also authored a book, and I love the name of the book, I Don't Want to Turn 3. Share with our viewers and our listeners what that title means and what your book is about.
The book is a true story. It's something, again, I was lucky enough, living this past year because of the pandemic, caused by COVID-19, in isolation, except for being able to be with your family, really gave me a special time to interact and be with these grandkids. And I got to tell you, what a trip. The reason being is all 6 of these kids have completely different personalities. The one thing they do have in common is a sense of curiosity. and how excited they get when they do get accomplishing something. Watching them grow year to year and interact with each other really is the basis for this book. What goes through a toddler's mind that parents are so desperate to understand? When does a toddler really understand the difference between me and us? This book kind of explores how a family finds this out together. As a baby boomer, I'm trying to understand how the world has evolved since I was 3 years old. That's also part of the story. My parents didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have remotes. I was my dad's remote. He said, "Son, go change the channel." I was the remote at the time. That's what this book is kind of all about. Is how do they find it and explore it together? At what age do we really begin to take responsibility for our actions? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13? Is it 23? I know plenty of baby boomers who are 63 years old that still don't take responsibility for their actions. And so that's really what the book is all about. So it's based on what really happened in our lives. It's based on the interaction of these 6 grandkids. All the pictures in the book are pictures that I had taken. I sent them to the illustrator to make them into cartoons, but they're live pictures of what happened around the house and things like that. It's the idea of Jordan, who was turning 3. He steals all his cousins' toys and he takes everything from them, and he gets discovered. And then how do they resolve it? And luckily the father came involved, got everybody together, and together they made the decision. The older Olivia, who was 8 at the time, had their class was giving toys to the homeless in town, and that's what they decided to do. And so it all came together, and that's why I think it's a fun story, because every family can kind of relate to that.
Yeah. What did the grandkids that are able to read, what's been some of their feedback from the book?
Interesting, because I just had a bunch of them here last for spring break here and what they did was, Olivia didn't know I was watching, but she grabbed the book and grabbed a couple of her younger cousins, and for some reason they ran underneath my desk and she started reading the book to them. And one of them, Jack, says, "Hey, that's me with my dinosaurs," and the other one says, "Yeah, that's me in the bathtub." And but what the greatest was when the 3-year-old, who's now 4 years old, Grace, she saw the book sitting on my desk. She says, "That's our family book."
Oh, how nice! That's got to be really cool for them. And you also, Marc, you also wrote another book. This is more of a business side book, but I just wanted to mention it because you're the author of that book as well. The Secrets of Retailing and How to Beat Wal-Mart. Kind of, share with our viewers and listeners, because we get a lot of business people reading or watching and listening to the show. You want to share what that book is really all about?
Sure. Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart. So I've been an entrepreneur the second half of my life. First half of my life, I was in corporate America in retailing and wholesaling. Worked for major chains like Macy's and Crown Books and a bunch of the dollar stores as they were coming up, and grew those into an industry. So, but I became an entrepreneur the second part of my life. And I opened up a business. I opened up right here. And it started right here in my bedroom. And it was an internet business called dollardays.com. And we became the premier business-to-business site on the internet, where we sold in case quantity to small businesses all around the world, shipped in all 50 states and around 40 foreign countries. Our customer base were the moms and the pops who were surviving and thriving as the chains. So I took this company public. So it's a public company. And so as we were building the company, I was starting to get calls from our customers, moms and pops and small businesses, on how do you do things. So I was getting like 30 calls a week. I said, well, I'll write a book. So the book, The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart, it's 15 chapters, and each chapter is devoted to some other aspect of a business. One of the chapters is how do you hire your people? Another chapter is how do you find your location? Where do you find your merchandise? What do you do? How do you market your site both online and traditionally? And the last chapter is exit strategy. What do you do? How do you when you're ready to retire? When you're ready to get out of it, what do you do to get to sell your business? So that's what the emphasis of that book is. It's how do you really compete against the big guys?
So I want to follow up with that because you mentioned it's really for the moms and pops, your original business that you had created. Do you think if we're sitting here talking 10, 20 years from now, when a majority of the baby boomers who own those 12 million mom and pop shops in the country, do you think there's any other generation that will ever have those types of numbers? Because now it seems like, big business is kind of putting all of the mom and pop businesses out of business.
I think today is the best time in many generations to open a business.
Okay.
Right. And the reason being is when you think about it, before the internet, if you wanted to open up a traditional business, it was expensive.
Right.
You had to find a location, you had to hire people, you had to buy merchandise, you had to make sure you had money in the bank. But in today's world, the internet has made really pretty much a level playing field for anyone who has a great idea or great service. So if you have a great idea, a great service, the first thing you should do is how can I sell it on the internet? How can I use the internet? Because instead of, in the old days, if you had a retail store, your customer base were people in your city or your county, and that's who came to your store. But today, if you have a great product or idea and you're on the internet, you can reach across the world. Right. So your customer base just starts to grow. And instead of having a lot of money tied up in the retail and storefront and inventory, you can not have that money tied up there, and you can spend it on letting people know who you are. Now, so again, I think there's going to be more businesses in the next couple of generations than there were in our generation because of this. It just gives you a marketing tool that we never had. I didn't get on the internet till I was 40 years old. So it's a whole different thing as you're growing up and what you're doing. But let's talk about why businesses fail. 50% of businesses will fail in the first 5 years. Okay. And that's a scary number. Right. So that's one of the reasons why, if you really want to be an entrepreneur and you really want to open a business, you got to think through this. What causes businesses to fail? Well, 42% of businesses fail because they don't have the right market product for their services. You may think that you've got the greatest thing since sliced bread. You got this great idea, you got this great product, and you're going to go out and sell it. But you may be the only one. I learned early on, because I was a buyer for some major department stores, that you buy for what your customers want, not what you want. Because if you start buying for what you want, it may not relate to your customer base. So one of the reasons, 42% of the reasons that the businesses fail is they got this great product or service, but nobody wants it. So you got to do your research before you do that. 30% of businesses fail because they don't have enough capital to sustain their business. If you're opening up business today, you need to make sure you set aside 6 months of dollars to run your business, to have to assume that you're not going to have any sales. Right. So you've got to make sure that you've got the capital lined up, whether it's from yourself or your parents or your friends, you've got to be able to have that capital lined up to sustain the business and assume that you're not going to get sales for 6 months. So 30% of businesses fail because they don't do that. They run out of money and nobody's going to give them any more money. And then, 25% of businesses fail because they don't create teamwork and communications within their own organization. Entrepreneurs, we think we know it all. We think we're the best at everything, but we're not. The first thing you have to do as an entrepreneur is step back and say, what don't I like? What am I not good at? In my case, I don't like spreadsheets. I don't like accounting. You stick me in a day, 8 hours a day of doing accounting stuff, I would go absolutely nuts. So I've got to find somebody who loves that, who has a passion for accounting and all the spreadsheets, to complement what my strengths are. As long as I've been on the internet, I don't know how to program things on the internet. So I've got to find people that have a passion for programming and pulling all that together. So you've got to be able to, first of all, build a team and realize your own weaknesses and supplement them with other people. And then second, you've got to be able to communicate with that team. You got to get them involved because if not, you're going to lose them. So if any of your listening audience is thinking of opening their own business, make sure you think through those three things of why businesses fail so you can get a step ahead of it.
Absolutely. Well, that's great advice. Thank you. I want to leave our viewers and listeners with this last question for you, Marc, and thank you again for your time today. What is one thing you want people to know and understand about baby boomers?
We are a generation that needs to be sharing more, that needs to really come together. As we were growing up, we had lots of friends, but then we go into the business world and, we don't have as many friends. And so now that we're near the end of again, you got 12 million still in business, but a lot of them are retired. What do you want to do? It's a community. We want to create a community where you can find like ideas and like members, and we can share with that. And that'll be one of the things we're building also is the different communities within the baby boomers so you can relate to it. So if you want to talk about the old movies, we got a whole community to do that. If you want to talk about music, if you need help with dementia, we have that. So we want to bring us all back to be the community we were when we were growing up. And then the other thing is at our age, we all want to leave legacies. What are we going to do? What are we going to pass on to the younger generations? And I'm hoping that what we build here on Baby Boomers will help the younger generation to understand and learn from our mistakes so that they can be even better than we ever were.
That's great advice. And again, I want to thank you for your time today. We're going to have the links to all of the babyboomer.org as well as your books in the show notes and up on the screen. And just wishing you nothing but continued success, Marc.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to Gramps Jeffrey, or Marc Joseph, for joining us here today to discuss baby boomers and his website, babyboomer.org. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.